Hello, welcome to another episode of Forgotten Cemeteries, Pacific Northwest. Today we're in the very quiet Mountain View Cemetery, located in North Plains, Oregon, Washington County. There's only one alternative name to the cemetery, and that's Dixie Mountain, and that's where we are right now, the Dixie Mountain area. So let's go meet some of the local residents and hear their story. A little bit of history behind this cemetery. It was established sometime before 1880 with 25 to 100 burials per the Oregon Burial Site Guide. Sign up front says 1889. We'll just go with what they say. Find the Grave shows around 74 memorials entered so far to give you an idea. It is still an active cemetery. This area, Dixie Mountain, was named after John Dix, first of 4 postmasters in the area. The Dixie Post Office was named after the Dix family as well. FYI, there's no relation to the South, because that's, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, Dixie, I wonder if that's related to the South somehow, and it is not. It has no relation, apparently. Coincidentally, Shadybrook Cemetery is close to here, and if you remember from my Shadybrook Cemetery video, and I could put a link below, we covered a man named Reverend Jehu Ogle John Dix, who's a very well-respected pioneer in the area. He's the only John Dix I could find in the Washington County area during the 1800s, so I'm assuming it's him. To add, the years in the book I found perfectly aligned with Shadybrook John's headstone years. This land was originally part of the Arthur W. Wallace homestead. In the book called Dixie Mountain Legacies, which I'll put a link again below, by Jackie Nelson and Joanne Tannock, they go on to say the cemetery in part of the book is the Arthur Wallace donated property for the purpose of laying to the rest of the deceased members of the community. It's written a little weird. For this reason, the cemetery was referred to as the Wallace Cemetery in the early days, and then later on the designation was changed to Mountain View Cemetery. They go on to talk about a few individuals and their headstones that are long gone from my understanding due to time, weather, nature, what have you. I was hoping to do an epic view of the mountains, but it's like kind of a closed-in place. There's a lot of trees, and like I said, it's kind of out in the forest, if you will. It took a while to get here, and interesting path to get here. Seems to have a lot of good history as well, that we'll talk about. As we approach the cemetery, I did discover that the Dixie Mountain area hosts the annual Strawberry Festival, which is held at the Dixie Mountain Grange, built in 1936. I guess it's at a railroad station near Buxton, Oregon, and held every Father's Day weekend. Over 60 years they've been doing this, and it appears to be the Dixie Mountain community's biggest claim to fame in the area. This cemetery walked that line of being forgotten about, thus being overgrown like some of the cemeteries we visited in the past. The book I mentioned earlier talks about a man named Don Logan who was interested in reviving Mountain View Cemetery in 1989. Coincidentally, he apparently was the individual responsible for rehabilitating Shadybrook Cemetery. And we visited that beautiful one, as you know. That was one of the more striking ones I visited. It was kind of my favorite, actually. So again, I'll put a link below if you're interested. It's kind of, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but there might be like a little, I think they have one of those trail cams out here at the cemetery or something. So our first story I want to talk about is Mrs. George Robertson and Mr. George Robertson. There's no marker for those two from my understanding, and remember, this is a different time, so we have to refer to her as Mrs. Robertson. Don't know her first name. But when she died, she was hauled via ox team on a sled and led by a few men on foot, walking through deep snow to deliver Mrs. Robinson's body to the cemetery site at one time. George Robertson would die 2 years later for some reason. Couldn't find a cause of death. But he would leave 4 children homeless at the time since both parents died. I'm assuming they died pretty young. The snow was too deep for oxen, so the body had to be dragged on a toboggan by men on snowshoes over to the log schoolhouse and cemetery. School and cemeteries is kind of a combo you see with the old pioneer places. We saw this at, I want to say Union Cemetery, and usually it served like as a community meeting place from my understanding. A little odd, but that's the way things were back then. Another group of men would bury George the next day next to his wife. During this time, undertakers and caskets were unavailable to the community. I mean, look around. It's 2021, and I still feel like we're kind of out in the wilderness. So the location of these graves are unknown from my understanding. They're buried out there somewhere under the snow each year during the winter, and it doesn't look like we'll ever know. I am seeing these little stakes sticking out of the ground with a little concrete block with kind of a number on it. Not sure if those are known or not. I wanted to give you an idea. Just outside the cemetery, 10 yards, you are entering kind of the forest at that point. There is a tree farm next to it, I believe a Christmas tree farm, but you're pretty close to just entering wildlife territory. So it's out in the middle of nowhere, like I said. And we'll talk about Charles Fredericks later. He has no marker at this cemetery. He died in 1894 and would be the 5th grade added to this cemetery. His story is a bit heartbreaking, and we'll talk about his story at Robert Service's headstone. He tried to walk through the snow from his homestead beyond Old Dixie to spend time at Christmas with his mother. And we'll talk a bit more about his story, obviously, and his demise. Like I said, from my understanding, Charles Fredericks' marker is no longer visible among several markers here that are gone for good. Well, the person with the trail cam on the cemetery is going to be very disappointed when they see a guy with a big beard and a camera talking to headstones. So, no deer for them. Here we have Cornelius Nelson, again an earlier settler family on Dixie Mountain. The Nelson family immigrated from Denmark in 1853 to the USA. Cornelius here was born in 1854, but not on Dixie Mountain. Shows him being born in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and his family, though, settled in Missouri. It looks like his parents are buried there. Cornelius, however, would migrate to California in the year 1874 to try his luck in the gold fields in something called Sonora, which is a city established in 1848 and was known as the Queen of the Southern Mines. I chose an Xmas picture because I like Christmas. Hallmark Xmas movies are coming up soon, so I can't be the only one excited about that. He would then meet a woman named Anna Amelia Sutherland Nelson. Quite a name. She's on the headstone to the left there. Anna's father was actually a blacksmith, and it just so happened Cornelius went to go work for him. Then in 1886, Cornelius and Anna's family decided to make the move to Oregon, which was a 40-day trip. Cornelius scored a 160-acre spot on the Dixie Mountain in 1888 that overlooked the Columbia River. Apparently, during their first year, 6 feet of snow would hit the mountain, locking in the Corneliuses to the point their flour and kerosene were exhausted. So they were things weren't looking good that winter for them. However, they did survive, luckily. I also read that Cornelius' father was seriously injured in the Civil War. He's buried back in Missouri and died only a few years after serving in the Civil War in 1871. And if my notes are correct, this is Sarah M. Moore Sutherland. It's an interesting last name. This is actually Anna Nelson's mother. We just talked about the Nelsons. They were actually to the right of her headstone. I believe I read she was one of the older individuals buried in the cemetery during the pioneer days, born in 1837. Looks like Julius, the husband, and Anna's father, is buried down at McMinnville. Here we have Katherine and James Rickman. In the book I found, they spelled Rickman with a Y instead of an I for some reason. Not sure if it was a typo. Known as one of the oldest individuals in this cemetery, Katherine was born in 1837 and James in 1832. So reading up on the history of the settlement in this area, the first 2 settler families on Dixie Mountain were not naturalized citizens, but were already kind of here. Because of that, they didn't qualify for land grants. They had to buy land through something called OCCR in 1880, or from what I read, Oregon and California Railroad. Because in 1868, the OCCR was granted a few sections of this area by the U.S. government in exchange for construction of a rail line from Portland through to Sacramento. I guess during this time, timber and clearing was such a pain that the land was kind of undesirable. But as we're seeing here, we got a cemetery, a community, and a strawberry festival. The Rickmans here took a chance in July of 1881 on the area, and they had 2 children at the time. There was a mention of a John Crinnick family that was part of that crew that settled here. I did find a John Crinnick born in 1880, buried at Forest View Cemetery, who was actually born on Dixie Mountain. It's a bird chirping at me. It's angry that I'm filming. Part of that write-up mentions that the Crinnicks were the first settlers in the Dixie Mountain District in 1878. So the story goes that they used a team of oxen, pulled a sled loaded up with their supplies up to the location up on the mountain. For a living, I guess they shaved shingles and farmed for the most part. I guess the Crinnick family, though, moved out at one point to Vernonia, Oregon. We have a unique headstone where they just have mother, brother, and father, and it just says service on it. It doesn't say like first names or anything. I am wondering, there's like little markers next to it that don't have any information except a stick and a number. And I'm wondering if one of those is Robert Service's. Earlier, we talked about the unmarked grave of Charles Fredericks, and Robert here ties into that. The book I mentioned talks about a Charles Fredericks and a Charles Frederickson. I'm thinking that they are the same story, maybe a typo in the book, perhaps. Not really sure, but Charles was a resident of Rye Hill and Pumpkin Ridge area. You can watch Arcade Cemetery if you'd like to learn more about Pumpkin Ridge. It's kind of got an interesting story behind it. Pulling Rye Hill up on maps didn't really show much. It seems that there's a lot of mines located in the area, though. Still looks secluded to this day. Anyways, Charles would travel to his relatives located on Rocky Point Road in the dead of winter. The snow was very deep, and at some point he would travel 5 miles by foot. He would get tired, lean up against a tree, and fell asleep. He would wake up and start making his way towards Scappoose instead of taking the road along the top of the mountain for some reason. Unsure if this was the normal way or their safe way, but appears he took the most difficult path based on what the book was saying. Not the best idea, because word got out that Charles hadn't been seen or heard from for a bit. During this time, Robert Service here and other Dixie Mountain individuals went looking for Charles. Based on their investigation, it appeared he got stuck trenching through deep snow, logs, brush, and the trip even got more difficult at one point, if you can imagine that. They then discovered that Fredericks apparently waded and crawled in the icy water in order to keep going to his destination. My thoughts are just civilization at this point. I think he was lost and knew he was lost at that point. The search party found some tracks since the snow was so deep in this area during that time of the year. Unfortunately, at some point, they would discover the frozen body of Fredericks along a creek. Robert and the crew wrapped the body in the blanket and tied it to a pole. The crew spent hours trying to bring the body back to the road. When they reached the road, they used horses and a sled to transport the body. Apparently, the pole that they used to carry Frederick's body was leaned against a tree along the road as a reminder to the community to stay on the path. Unknown if that pole is still standing or buried in time. So, looks like Robert's service here helped discover the body, actually, and got to see a gruesome thing in the end. Our final stop is William Stoltenberg, a long one. Shows him being born in 1857 in Germany, go figure. Not much other than him, but him and his wife moved to Iowa to Oregon in the early 1900s. There is a road around here named Stoltenberg, I believe, in the area, about 6 minutes south. I'm guessing they were part of the earlier settlers in this area, if they have a road named after them. All right, time for the tour. I think it'll be a short tour. An idea where you come in at. It's like I said, very quiet. I mean, if I just sit here for a few seconds. Yeah, there's not a noise. It's eerie. It's kind of nice. Besides the trail cam going off every 5 seconds, it's pretty peaceful overall. The whole time I was talking about, what was it, the Rickman's headstone, I kept hearing, ee, ee. So I am waiting for someone just to show up. Say, what are you doing here? This is a very small cemetery. Like I said, I think Find a Grave said 74 memorials so far. You do see a lot of that. Like just markers with a number written in a concrete circle. Quite a lot of them, actually. And my understanding, I believe Find a Grave says a lot of the markers are lost forever. So maybe there's a plot somewhere. Guess we'll start down here. A little plate. Oh wow, that was this year. I'm surprised piece of paper survived. Wasn't disintegrated. Do have some World War II vet here. Nelson. Oh my God, it's a car. I think that's the first car I've heard in 2 hours. There's service. And like I said, I think maybe that's their marker there. I'm not really sure on that one. The pioneers seem to be concentrated up front of the cemetery, closest to the road. And there's the Nelsons. Dog and cat. I'm glad to see my wife is alive. She went out to the forest to go mess around. God knows what she was doing, but I just saw her, so a little nervous up here, I guess, just because of the wildlife. Maybe I don't know what's up here. There's mountain lions, maybe there's not. But it was a drive for sure. We've got another World War II vet. He's a unique one. If I can get underneath it, built out of wood. Try to get in there a little bit. Hopefully you could see it. Pretty setting though. We saw that at what do you call it? Cooper Mountain Cemetery. We saw a lot of those graves with the flowers in them. Don't know what that is. Maybe somebody out there knows. Some type of electrical generation iconoclast. Don't know what that is either. I'll rely on you guys to tell me what that is. It's a unique one. We never saw that concrete with like a red brick with a name written on it. Please stay off. Stay off what? Really pretty one. Looks like Harold just died this 2020. And Alice is still alive. We've seen that style before. I can't read that. Maybe you guys can see it. Put it there for you. Really pretty one in the back. Cub fan. Ugh. As I said before, I'm all Cleveland, but I guess that's all right. I think the Cubs were in the same boat as Cleveland for a while. Just these guys back here. The writing on this one, strange. It's like something was supposed to be written and never happened. I think there was a little sign over here. We could go check it out real quick. Apologies, the video was kind of a short one. But if you'd like to be buried here, you can call that person. They have four cell phone numbers, so somebody will pick up the phone. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the story of Dixie Mountain in the community. It was kind of a super secretive one. Like I said, I can only find that one book. If it wasn't for that book, I'd have nothing for you guys. So I hope you liked the video. Hope you liked the little stories. If you have any other recommendations on cemeteries to visit in Oregon or even southern Washington, feel free to comment below. Have a good one and stay safe. Hope you enjoyed the video.